Welcome to Sleepy Cosmic. As the night settles and the world grows quiet around you, let your thoughts drift upward toward the endless sky above. Now, imagine that sky is alive, not fixed, not constant, but breathing, changing, dreaming. Every hour, the heavens repaint themselves. One moment, they're brushed in soft lavender mist. The next, they shimmer in deep ocean blue. Then, suddenly, a pulse of crimson, golden threads weaving through clouds that glow like embers before fading into violet dusk again. You look up, and time itself feels different. The sun no longer commands the colors, the sky does. Every shade is a heartbeat, every hue a secret whispered across the horizon. And as the colors shift, something strange begins to happen within you too. You start to feel connected, as if the rhythm of your own thoughts is being painted in the air above. What would a world like that do to us? A world where every passing hour rewrites the sky, and no color ever stays long enough to call home. So take a breath, let your mind drift, and let's step together into that ever-changing world, where the sky dreams in color. There's something quietly powerful about the sky. It's the most constant thing we know, and yet the most distant. You've looked up at it thousands of times without really seeing it. But imagine if it refused to stay one color, if it decided to become alive, expressive, emotional. A sky that blushes, sighs, flares, and cools again. Each shade and emotion the earth is trying to show you. You'd start to notice things you'd missed for years. The way light caresses the edges of rooftops. How shadows breathe when the tones around them change. How your own heartbeat feels slightly different beneath a green noon versus a rose-colored dusk. Curiosity pulls at you, doesn't it? That soft hum that says, how would that feel? This is the trigger, the spark, that shifts your imagination from observer to participant. You're no longer watching a sky. You're living beneath it, breathing in the rhythm of its color clock. Every hour carries a promise of surprise, and every surprise reawakens your sense of wonder. The monotony that once dulled your senses dissolves into anticipation. You start to crave what comes next, not in an anxious way, but with a kind of gentle excitement that children feel, waiting for the next page of a bedtime story. Now, imagine how that rhythm begins to shape you. You'd learn to live by color rather than by clock. You'd glance upward to tell time, reading the shade of the horizon instead of a number on your wrist. The soft coral hour might mean breakfast, the silver blue hour a time for work. And when the violet hour arrives, your body knows it's time to rest. Without realizing it, you've shifted your identity from a being ruled by artificial schedules to someone in sync with the living sky. This is the psychological transformation buried inside the question. The release of control, the surrender to something vast yet intimate. The comfort in this world comes from its familiarity. Everyone has seen a sunset. Everyone has felt the subtle ache of twilight. You already know what it's like when the sky changes, but here it never stops. The entire day becomes a long exhale of color, And as you walk through it, you start to feel safe inside the unknown. Each new hue doesn't threaten you, it soothes you. This is your brain finding calm through predictability in change, learning that even constant motion can feel like home. When you trust its rhythm, close your eyes for a moment and picture yourself standing on a quiet hill. The air is cool. The wind hums against your ears like distant music. Overhead, clouds drift lazily, their edges kissed with pink, then gold, then green. The transformation happens so slowly that you can't quite tell when one color ends and the next begins. It's a slow dance of light, one that invites you to stop trying to define the moment and just exist within it. This is where contrast works. It's quiet magic. You remember the world you know, static, blue, predictable, and you compare it with this one alive fluid and new every hour. That subtle comparison makes your mind expand. It's the space between what is and what could be that lets curiosity stretch its wings. And as it does, you find yourself breathing deeper, your thoughts slowing, your inner dialogue quieting. The story isn't just happening outside of you, it's unfolding inside you to dot. The colors become a mirror for emotion. When the sky turns amber, you feel grounded, safe, and warm. When it shifts to emerald, a cool alertness awakens. A crimson hour might spark restlessness, while a lilac dusk lulls you back into reflection. Your emotions are now symphonies playing to the same rhythm as the heavens. You begin to realize that color is not just something you see, it's something you live. There's a gentle kind of empowerment hidden in this idea. The knowledge that you could be shaped by beauty instead of routine, by curiosity instead of urgency. The sky, once an afterthought, becomes your teacher. It reminds you that even the most ordinary backdrop of life can become extraordinary if you choose to see it differently. And maybe that's the quiet message the universe has been trying to send. That wonder isn't out there waiting, it's above you. Changing right now, every hour, so you breathe deeply. Imagine this world until you can almost taste the air that glows with color. And you realize something subtle has shifted in you. You're calmer, softer, more open. Because when you imagine a sky that changes every hour, you start to see that change itself can be beautiful. You stop resisting the passing of time and start marveling at its artistry. And as this hour closes, you look up once more. The sky, your quiet companion, has turned a shade of deep, sleepy indigo. It's the color of endings, of reflection, of the world whispering, rest now. The day exhales, and so do you. Pass, and in that small pause between breaths, between one color and the next, do you realize you've already begun to drift into the story, gently, peacefully, carried by the slow pulse of the ever-changing sky? If you've ever looked up on a clear afternoon and wondered why blue, you're not alone. The answer hides in something both simple and profound. The invisible conversation between sunlight and the air around us. It's a dance so constant, so ordinary, that most of us forget it's happening. But right now, Let's slow it down together. Let's pull the moment apart and look closer, like turning over a seashell to study the tiny ridges of its design. Light, though it feels pure and white, is actually a spectrum, a collection of colors traveling side by side. When sunlight reaches Earth, it greets the molecules in our atmosphere, and those molecules scatter the light in every direction. Blue, being the smallest and most energetic of visible wavelengths, bounces the hardest. It ricochets across the sky, filling every corner of our vision. That scattering, called Rayleigh scattering, is why we live under a blue dome instead of a white one. The air, in its endless motion, is painting the sky for us, stroke by stroke, every second of every day. And here's where curiosity leans in. If the air can turn sunlight blue, what else might it do? Imagine if the atmosphere changed its ingredients. A little more dust, a touch more water vapor, a new mix of gases drifting through. Each shift would tint the heavens differently. A world with thicker air might gift us crimson afternoons. A thinner one, paler skies, like whispers of silver. Beyond distant planets, it's already happening. Mars glows butterscotch, and Titan's horizon burns a smoky orange. The cosmos, it seems, loves variety. We just happen to be born under blue. But why does knowing this feel oddly comforting? Because science, at its heart, is a lullaby for the curious. It reminds us that there's order even in wonder. The fact that the sky's color can be explained doesn't make it less magical. It makes it more personal. Every time you look up, you're seeing sunlight touch air, air touch your eyes, and your brain translate vibration into emotion. The blue above you is literally the color of interaction, of connection. It's not a thing, it's an event happening right now. Still, part of you may wonder if blue is only a byproduct of scattering. What would it mean if the rules changed? If our world began to shift its palette hour by hour, would we notice right away? Or would we simply feel something different inside? A flicker of unease, a spark of awe. Change in the sky is change in the self. We anchor our emotions to what we see. So a shifting sky could gently rewrite how we feel about stability, time, and truth itself. There's a quiet kind of authority in science. It tells us how things work. But there's a gentler authority in imagination. It asks what else could be. Betwig those two lies, a bridge, and that's where we stand tonight. Knowing why the sky is blue lets us wonder safely. What might happen if it weren't? Understanding becomes permission to dream. That's the paradox of curiosity. The more we learn, the more beautifully uncertain the world feels. Picture this: sunlight streaming through an atmosphere that's subtly alive, shifting density every hour. At dawn, fine ice crystals scatter red, so the world wakes in a blush. By noon, warmth rises, water vapor thickens, scattering green. As the evening cools, dust ascends, turning the heavens gold. The physics is the same, only the variables have changed. The same sunlight, the same rules of scattering, but 1,000 different moods painted overhead. It's science still, just wearing a poet's heart. Your mind may resist at first. It prefers the comfort of blue. Routine feels safe. But beneath that resistance lies the deeper thrill, the human love for pattern breaking. When the familiar tilts, we feel alive. It's the same impulse that makes you lean forward in a story when something unexpected happens. The brain lights up, searching for meaning, and in that search, it forgets to worry. It's the subtle magic of controlled uncertainty. We want to be surprised, but gently. That's what this thought experiment offers. A world that shifts, but never frightens. Think of how children stare at the sky. They don't yet know about scattering or refraction. They simply see color and feel wonder. Somewhere along the way, we trade that awe for explanation. But tonight, maybe we can hold both. You can understand the physics and still be moved by it. You can whisper Rayleigh scattering and still feel like you're standing in front of a miracle. Because that's what truth often is, not the end of mystery, but its deepening. So, as we stand under this ordinary blue, imagine it breathing, changing slowly, an enormous living canvas. The science gives it structure. Your imagination gives it soul. The two don't fight, they dance. And in that dance lies something more profound than either alone. The realization that reality and wonder are not opposites, but partners. Maybe that's why blue became our default, not because it's the only possibility, but because it's the perfect balance between calm and mystery. Blue is the pause between knowing and dreaming. It's the color of steady breath, of oceans mirroring the sky, of the mind at rest yet still awake. It reminds us that even the most rational truths can feel emotional when we slow down enough to notice them. So the next time you look up, don't just see blue. See billions of tiny air molecules scattering sunlight in silent cooperation, creating beauty through chaos. See the quiet physics of serenity. And then, if you dare, imagine what happens if those particles decide to change their tune. If the sky begins to hum through every color we've never known. Because behind every explanation lies another question, waiting patiently, painted in light at dawn. The world wakes in a whisper of lilac and rose. Dew holds small mirrors of blossom-colored sky, and rooftops sip the early glow. The first hour is a hush, delicate and hopeful. The kind of light that makes ordinary things feel quietly sacred. As morning deepens, the sky slides into warm amber. You feel it in your chest, an easing, as if someone wrapped the town in a familiar shawl. People move with a gentler tempo, and the world seems to reassure itself that hurriedness is unnecessary. Mid-morning unfurls into a clear, tender gold that sharpens edges and makes shadows sing. Leaves flicker with private light. The act of walking becomes reverent. In this hour, attention settles like warm tea. Details surface, the curl of a leaf, the pattern on a bench. Small certainties that steady the mind. Noon arrives in crystalline blue, clean and honest. Under this hour your thoughts feel lucid, choices feel exact. The ocean appears like polished glass, reflecting the moment's clarity. People notice small truths, a child's laugh, a dog's sudden sprint, the deliberate turning of a windmill. Blue encourages clarity without urgency, a quiet invitation to see precisely as afternoon stretches. The sky tilts toward jade, a soft, invigorating green that seems to feed the earth. Gardens deepen, grasses glow, and the air tastes faintly of cut leaves. Tasks gain renewed purpose. Small acts feel like offerings to a living landscape. There is a sense of being held by growth itself, an alignment between inner rhythm and outer bloom. Evening begins its slow descent in layers, smoky teal, gentle cerulean, each tone lowering the day's volume. Sunlight thins to pastel ribbons, and windows scatter these notes across rooms, softening faces and easing the hard edges of fatigue. This decline asks only that you be present, nothing more. Dusk blooms into coral and magenta. Streets are painted with summer memory. Strangers and lovers alike find themselves quieted. The choral hour invites small reconciliations and deep gratitude. Apologize feel true. Thanks feel heavy with meaning. It is a time for breathing together. Night widens into velvety indigo and then rich violet. Shadows lengthen into soft companions. The city lights become a constellation you can walk through. Under violet, stories lean forward, voices drop, and confessions feel honest. This hour carries a gentle sacredness, spacious and forgiving, where memory and presence meet. Between these dominant notes are subtle intermediates, periwinkle whispers, moss-tinged pauses, flashes of rose gold that emerge like unexpected kindnesses. These transitions are the music between movements, the pauses that teach you how to listen. Watching them is like learning a language. The sky speaks in tones and cadences, and soon you read its syntax. Novelty becomes grammar, and your body, unknowingly, adopts its timing. Places transform with the palette. A harbor under rose becomes a place of slow conversation and hands that remembered gentleness. A forest under jade murmurs in a tongue older than words, asking for quiet steps. Cities at violet hour hum with a humane stillness, an urban pulse slowed to a heartbeat you can follow. Color is not merely paint, but mood, social script, an unspoken agreement about how to move and how to care. Small rituals emerge naturally. Cafes timed to choral open for brief, honest talks. Gardens invite midday tending in jade light. Parents call children home by color rather than clock. These practices shape values, patience, attention, the art of waiting. The novelty teaches discipline. The discipline becomes cradle. There is a subtle social alchemy in the palette. Color becomes a shared language, requiring no translation. Neighborhoods pause as the sky shifts, strangers lifting faces in the same silent recognition. That communal pause creates a kinder FOMO, not frenzy, but a soft longing to witness the next gentle miracle. Rituals take root, a bench where people meet at gold, a lane where musicians play at violet, markets that open when jade arrives. These practices reshape priorities. Over months and years, the rhythm alters identity. You become less a clock-bound person and more someone guided by hue. Choices shift from efficiency to alignment. Plant when green invites growth. Speak when coral asks for gentleness. Rest when indigo leans toward sleep. It feels like empowerment, a reclaiming of time through beauty rather than a surrender to whim. And in that patience, your life becomes quietly enormous. Light is more than illumination. Here, it is the quiet architect of existence. Every hour, as the sky exhales a new color, life below bends and breathes to meet it. The world has learned to listen to the spectrum like music, and every species finds its rhythm in the symphony. What was once steady daylight and predictable dusk has become something more alive, a pulsing dialogue between color and creature. Imagine a meadow at dawn, not washed in gold, but in soft lilac. The flowers do not open all at once. Instead, their petals hum with hesitation, waiting for the precise wavelength that tells them now. Each color carries its own permission. When the sky slips into rose, certain blossoms stir pigments in their cells, tuned to absorb that particular tone, feeding not only on light but on hue. As the hours wander, the meadow transforms. Blue gives way to green, then amber, and with every change, a new species takes the stage, as if nature itself were orchestrating a slow-motion ballet of survival. You can almost hear the difference. A faint murmur when plants absorb red, beneath a hush when they rest beneath silver. Over generations, evolution rewrites itself. Leaves become translucent to catch fleeting colors. Roots learn to store the residue of lost hours. Even the air feels charged, heavy with the scent of transformation. Light no longer simply nourishes, it teaches. And where plants follow color, animals follow movement. Imagine a bird whose wings refract the sky, not for beauty, but for belonging. Its feathers shimmer differently with each hour. Azure in the blue phase, coral under gold, camouflage in motion. To see such a creature is to glimpse adaptation made art. Predators, too, must change their eyes, evolving new pigments, to read the world's shifting script. 1 hour's perfect sight becomes blindness in the next, forcing them into a rhythm of anticipation and awe beneath the surface. In oceans painted by the sky above, light filters down like stained glass. Coral reefs glow to match the hour, flickering from emerald to amethyst. Fish trail ribbons of color that echo the surface, their scales mirroring the mood of the world above. The sea, once a static blue, becomes a living mirror to the heavens, a reminder that life, in all its forms, is simply light choosing new shapes to live in. And then there is humanity. How would we fare in such a restless rhythm? Our bodies, quietly governed by light even now, would awaken to new cues. The circadian rhythm, that invisible metronome of sleep and energy, would multiply its measures. We might find ourselves feeling certain emotions only beneath certain skies, calm in teal, reflective in lavender, inspired under crimson. Over time, we might even evolve receptors that read color the way we now read time. Skin that subtly shifts hue to absorb specific wavelengths. Eyes that recalibrate hourly. Minds that find peace not through control, but through surrender. Our cities would not resist this transformation. They would adapt to it. Architecture could become translucent, refracting the sky's palette into soft harmonies that keep human biology aligned with nature's pulse. Instead of artificial lights, we might rely on panels that echo the hour's dominant hue, turning buildings into living extensions of the atmosphere. Imagine walking through streets where color becomes mood, where entire communities shift from productivity to reflection, not by schedule, but by shade. Even emotion would evolve. The psychology of color would no longer be theory. It would be daily truth. Under amber, empathy might heighten. Under indigo, introspection deepens. Relationships would ebb and flow with the sky's emotion. Perhaps arguments would pause naturally during softer hues, as if the world itself whispered, "Wait, feel first, speak later." Color would not just shape our environment, but our behavior, our connections, our sense of meaning. Nocturnal life would follow a different rulebook. As the sky cycles through its night hues, obsidian, violet, deep emerald creatures of the dark wood glow in reply. Fireflies would shift their luminescence to harmonize with the upper palette, their signals blending into the rhythm of ours. Bioluminescent fungi might flicker softly in tune with cosmic patterns. Even shadows would seem alive, not as absence, but as the quiet pulse between colors. The heartbeat of rest between each chromatic breath. And somewhere in all of this, there's a mirror held up to us. Because adaptation isn't just survival, it's surrender with intelligence. The plants bending toward turquoise light, the birds shimmering with the hour, the people living by color rather than clock. All of them teach the same truth. The world is always changing, and those who thrive are the ones who move gently with it. There's something soothing about that idea, that even in constant change, there's peace. That rhythm is a form of rest. Each color that arrives teaches impermanence, and each one that fades leaves behind gratitude. Life under this sky becomes a practice of letting go and beginning again every hour. Every hue a fresh permission to exist, and as the final color of the day, a deep velvet indigo spreads across the horizon. The world falls quiet, not from exhaustion, but from completion. Plants fold softly inward, animals slow, and humans, attuned now to this chromatic pulse, feel their breath align with the world's. The sky no longer feels separate. It feels like skin stretched over the shared body of life. Here, color is not decoration. It is communication. It is emotion. It is the bridge between the seen and the felt. And beneath it, everything from a blade of grass to a wandering mind learns to speak in light dot. As centuries pass beneath this kaleidoscopic sky, the very definition of life begins to shift. Color, once background, becomes the architect of form and behavior. Biology learns not just to survive under light, but to collaborate with it, to let change be the pulse of existence. What once seemed unstable becomes the world's most reliable rhythm. Generations of scientists, artists, and dreamers study this evolving symbiosis. They find that color has become an environmental language, one that both the simplest algae and the most complex mind understand intuitively. Photosynthesis, once a steady transaction between plant and sun, now dances in gradients. Some plants bloom only under coral tones. Others open their petals for mere minutes during the violet hour, feeding off its fleeting intensity. These micro-moments become sacred. Entire ecosystems hinge on them. Small windows where the balance between too much and too little is razor-thin. And yet life manages. Life always manages. It's strange, isn't it, to imagine that fragility could breed strength. But that's what this world teaches. Resilience is not rigidity, but rhythm. The constant shifting of color doesn't exhaust living things. It refines them. Roots grow more patient. Wings grow wiser. Every adaptation carries a whisper of humility. You cannot own the light, only move with it. And perhaps that is what humans learn most profoundly. For centuries, we built systems to control our world. Clocks, cities, routines, artificial suns. But in this world of hourly hues, control dissolves into participation. People learn to live in sync with the natural chromatic tide, allowing emotion and energy to flow with the changing atmosphere. You wake beneath a rose sky, not to an alarm, but to invitation. You eat when gold warms your hunger. You rest when teal lowers your thoughts into stillness. Time no longer marches, it breathes. Psychologists of this new age begin to map something extraordinary. The emotional wavelength of the species. They discover that human feelings correspond not to ours, but to colors themselves. The gentle blues nurture empathy. The greens evoke focus and generosity. The reds spark courage. Each hue is a mirror for a human need. Therapy becomes immersive, not conversation in rooms, but quiet exposure to the right color at the right time. Depression is treated with gradients of dawn. Pay anxiety with shades of evening lavender. Healing becomes atmospheric. Our languages change too. The word time starts to fade from daily speech. Instead, people talk in color. I'll meet you in the gold hour. Let's talk after the J. It's not just poetic, it's practical. Because in this world, time feels different depending on what's above you. The hours no longer measure distance between moments. They measure texture between feelings. Art transforms most of all. Painters no longer chase realism, they chase memory. Music begins to sync itself to chromatic shifts. Composers write in palettes, not notes. A symphony for the choral dusk. Dancers rehearse under rotating skies, learning to move differently as light refracts through their bodies. The act of creation itself becomes collaboration with nature. No human is the artist alone. The sky authors every piece. But as with all beauty, there is contrast, a truth that gives it shape. When color rules all, its absence becomes profound. In those rare moments when the sky turns a soft, translucent gray, an intermission between hues, silence falls over the world. People stop speaking. Animals pause. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. That single hour of neutrality becomes a kind of collective meditation, a reminder that even in a world of endless variety, stillness remains sacred. The absence of color isn't emptiness, it's equilibrium over generations. Humans begin to evolve subtle physical changes. The skin becomes more photosensitive, reflecting light in faint undertones, shimmering slightly in certain hues. Eyes grow capable of perceiving colors beyond the old human range, seeing not just what is visible, but the moods inside light itself. Children born in this world can look up and feel the wavelength in their bones. To them, the sky doesn't just change. It speaks. And slowly, society redefines beauty. It's no longer symmetry or status, but alignment. People admire those who can flow gracefully with the sky's emotion, those whose presence feels harmonious with the world's current hue. There's something magnetic about calm adaptability. It becomes the new form of strength. The anxious rush of the old world fades away, replaced by a gentler ambition, not to be faster or richer, but to be attuned. Even religion reshapes itself. Bold gods of sun and storm give way to a more fluid spirituality, one that honors transition. Temples are built with open roofs, designed to let color spill through at all hours. People gather not to pray for miracles, but to witness them unfolding quietly in the sky. Faith becomes observation, worship becomes awareness. And yet, beneath all this evolution, beneath the scientific adaptation, the emotional intelligence, the art, and the wonder lies one timeless truth. Everything alive wants to belong. Color, in its constant transformation, teaches belonging through acceptance. Each shade yields to the next without resentment, and in that surrender, the cycle sustains itself. Life thrives not by clinging, but by trusting the next hue to carry it forward. So when you imagine this world, when you close your eyes and picture the sky breathing through its orchestra of tones, perhaps the lesson isn't about biology at all. Perhaps it's about us, about learning that change, however constant, isn't chaos. It's communication. It's the universe whispering, stay awake to wonder. Because even here, even under skies that refuse to stay the same, there's a kind of peace that doesn't fade. It only changes color. Close your eyes and imagine the sky as an emotional weather map. Each hour a different note in a slow-moving song. Colors are not merely visual. They are feelings that wash across the world and through your body. Under a crimson noon, your pulse quickens. not because of heat alone, but because the hue tightens attention like a drumbeat. Under a pale blue afternoon, your shoulders lower and thoughts soften as if someone eased your spine. This is the quiet psychology of color, light shaping mood without a word. Think of the last time a color stopped you. Perhaps a yellow storefront felt like an invitation, or a particular ocean blue let you breathe. Colors anchor memory. They become hooks on which whole afternoons hang. In a world where the sky shifts hourly, those hooks multiply. Memory and mood begin to map themselves by hue. You remember meeting someone not by date, but by the choral hour beneath which you stood. Your mornings and griefs, your small triumphs and hesitations, find chromatic coordinates. There is power in that mapping. Where once clocks dictated your day, color scripts your inner weather. We learn to read your moods through the sky's transitions. Green fosters focus. Amber invites repair. Indigo prepares rest. This external cue removes friction. The mind stops arguing with itself. It aligns. Identity softens from someone who lives by appointments to someone who lives by rhythm. That shift feels like freedom. You are no longer captive to numbers, but held by color. Contrast deepens the effect. A bright scarlet noon makes the following lavender hour feel like mercy. Peaks and troughs gain meaning because they sit side by side. Begin to crave the gentle because it follows the fear. This isn't anxious FOMO, but a tender longing to witness the next hue, to feel the next tenderness, to not let a rare milky gold hour pass unobserved. That communal pause, that shared upward glance creates quiet social rituals and a sense of mutual care. Color also becomes an emotional primer for conversation. Under certain skies, words come easier. In a teal, our problem-solving flows. Arguments soften beneath violet twilight. Couples create informal rules. No heavy decisions during red. Difficult talks reserved for indigo. Put the sky in effect moderates behavior. It becomes a benevolent referee nudging society toward moments of kindness and restraint, making empathy part of the daily architecture. Scientific study in such a world would be both exacting and humane. Researchers map hormonal cascades tied to wavelengths. Dopamine flutters under bright gold. Cortisol eases under soft green. Therapists prescribe walks during specific hues. Please schedule exams beneath skies that favor concentration. Medicine and art collaborate. Theaters time premieres to align with uplifting tones. Hospitals design recovery wards with calming chromatic cycles. Authority grows around color, not as command but as informed suggestion. And yet the system is not tyrannical. The sky invites feeling. It does not force it. Your agency remains. Choosing to resist a mood, to journal against the pull of a particular hue, becomes an act of self-knowledge. Emotional intelligence here is not suppression, but discernment. To read the sky, feel the pull, and decide whether to yield or to meet it with gentle steadiness. Those who master that choice become quietly powerful. There is a subtler, spiritual effect to Colors become lived symbols. Communities hold silent hours when a uniform silver hangs overhead, honoring pause and collective reflection. Festivals bloom when a rare luminous hour arrives, spontaneous and tender. Joy becomes seasonal within a single day. Rituals stitch meaning into time's passage and teach gratitude for a lilac that calms anxieties, for a gold that sparks generosity. Finally, the sky becomes a teacher of impermanence. Emotions, like weather, are transient. When your sadness is mirrored by a teal dusk, you learn the rhythm of feeling that it will pass and be followed by another hue. The sky tutors equanimity. Where once you might have clung to or fought an emotion, you now receive it as part of a larger chromatic tide. Acceptance here is not resignation. It is compassionate literacy with yourself. So, when you look up in this imagined world, notice which color meets you and how your body answers. Learn the vocabulary of hue, which tones steady your breath, which open your chest, which close your throat. Practice gentleness when a color brings discomfort. Celebrate when a shade feels like ease. Over time, your inner seasons will map onto the sky's choreography. And with that alignment, a new kind of home forms, one where every feeling is held, named, and gently changed. Imagine a world where the horizon itself became a canvas, where every hour civilization paused, even if just for a breath, to look upward. The sky above, no longer a constant blue dome, but a living gallery, would paint the world below in shifting moods. 1 hour amber light would spill across rooftops, making even the simplest clay home look like gold. The next, a wash of violet would fall over glass towers, turning them into silent cathedrals of reflection. In this world, art wouldn't just hang in museums, put with through the streets, wear shoes, and breathe beneath the open sky. Humans have always been drawn to color. It's how we express joy, grief, belonging. But if the sky itself changed every hour, color would no longer be a choice. It would become a shared destiny. Cities would evolve not for function alone, but for harmony with light. Architects might design buildings with skin-like surfaces that adapt to each hue. Glowing coral in orange light, whispering silver beneath blue. Streets could be paved with iridescent stone, reflecting the sky like liquid mirrors, so that every step becomes a brushstroke in the day's painting. In such a world, people might gather on balconies at the turning of each hour, not for the time, but for the transition. Imagine an entire city holding its breath as the last threads of emerald light dissolve into the blush of rose. Children would press their faces against windows, not to see the weather, but to watch emotion unfold across the heavens. Artists wouldn't try to capture a single moment anymore. Paint chase the flow, painting not permanence, but change itself. And perhaps that's what humanity would begin to learn, that beauty doesn't live in what stays, but in what moves through us. Fashion, too, would transform into an act of resonance. People might wear fabrics woven with tiny prisms that shift with the sky. their clothes a reflection of what the heavens feel like that hour. You wouldn't ask someone what they were wearing. You'd ask, how does your color feel today? A deep crimson hour might make us bold. A soft lavender hour could draw us inward. Even conversations would adapt to rhythm and shade. A kind of emotional choreography between humans and the sky. There's a psychology in that, a deep, unspoken synchronization. When light changes, emotion follows. Our ancestors once marked time by the movement of the sun, but now time itself would feel emotional. Morning could arrive not as brightness, but as a breath of mint green hope. Noon could blaze in gold, not to tire us, but to remind us of energy. And dusk might descend not in sadness, but in deep oceanic calm. The sky would stop being a backdrop and become a participant, an artist, therapist, and philosopher rolled into one infinite canvas. Society would begin to mirror this fluidity. Governments and businesses might coordinate their schedules with emotional tones. Imagine schools holding lessons of creativity under pink light, or meditations during soft turquoise skies. Cities could design color calendars, predicting when the skies would shift. So public spaces could adjust their lighting, music, and even scent. Parks might bloom differently each hour, sun-reactive petals opening in one hue and closing in another. Humans would stop resisting change and start dancing with it. This harmony between light and life would reshape our sense of identity. In a static sky, we define ourselves by stability, by what doesn't change. But in a world where everything glows differently each hour, we'd begin to define ourselves by adaptability, by how we flow with the unseen. Every shade above would whisper, you, too, are meant to evolve. That's the silent empowerment of such a world, a civilization that learns to reflect, not control. Its surroundings, art galleries, might not even exist as static buildings. They could become moving exhibitions that drift with the light, projections that respond to the sky's frequency, turning entire cityscapes into one collective masterpiece. Imagine walking through a plaza where murals breathe, where colors ripple to match the sky's current tone, where statues shimmer in gold, then fade into blue silence. People would no longer see art as something to look at, but something to live within. And yet, beneath all this beauty, there's a deeper question. Would we still feel awe if wonder became constant? Or would we need moments of stillness, a pause between colors, to remember the contrast? Perhaps that's where meaning would live, in those fleeting in-betweens, when one hue dissolves into another, when light seems to hold its breath before becoming something new. Humanity might build entire rituals around that transition. A collective silence as the sky's pulse changes, reminding us that life, too, is made of thresholds. You can almost feel it, can't you? That sense of togetherness, people standing on balconies, faces tilted upward, sharing a moment that no photograph could ever keep. The sky becomes a mirror not just for emotion, but for unity. No two people see the exact same shade, and yet everyone shares the same transformation. It's the most beautiful paradox, individuality glowing inside, collective wonder. And maybe that's what civilization would finally learn from its shifting heavens. That we are not meant to be permanent masterpieces, but living, breathing works in progress. That our purpose is not to capture color, but to experience it. Not to hold the sky still, but to let it move through us, hour by hour, hue by hue. Because in the end, art is not what we create, it's how we see. And when the sky itself becomes an ever-changing gallery, perhaps the greatest masterpiece of all would be the human heart, learning, finally, to change with grace. Imagine a world where clocks never existed. No ticking hands slicing the day into fragments. No alarms jolting us from dreams. No numbers defining when to begin or when to rest. Instead, imagine looking up and knowing exactly what time it was by the color of the sky. In this world, people don't say, "Meet me at 3." They say, "Meet me at the call hour." The very air becomes the clock. Soft and silent, its rhythm written not in seconds, but in shades. The choral hour would come just after morning's pale blush, when light feels like it's still deciding whether to be gold or pink. That would be the time of beginnings. Farmers might step into their fields when the first warmth of orange touches the soil. Children might open their eyes as their rooms glow in gentle tangerine. You wouldn't need to count minutes. You'd simply feel the world waking with you. Each hue would hum a quiet message. Time not as pressure, but as pulse. As the sky shifted through its hourly moods, the pace of life would shift too. The blue hour might be when focus settles, a time for thought, for work, for quiet motion. Blue has always whispered of clarity, the color of deep oceans and calm minds. Imagine an entire civilization entering a shared flow state, guided not by deadlines, but by the cool invitation of light. The rhythm of productivity would feel natural, effortless, like swimming with a current instead of against it. Then, as day leans toward warmth again, the amber hour would arrive. It would be the signal for rest, for meals, for gathering together under the golden hue that reminds everyone, yes, the world is still kind. Families would talk about their days not in hours or appointments, but in colors. Be met during the violet hour, someone might say, meaning twilight, the sacred bridge between energy and stillness. I fell in love in the crimson hour, another might whisper, recalling a time when the sky burned like passion itself. Without numbers, time becomes emotional, personal, even poetic. You wouldn't need a watch to remind you how late you are. The light would simply invite or release you, guiding you toward what the body already knows, when to move, when to breathe, when to stop. There's a kind of peace in that, the kind that modern life often steals without us noticing, the kind that can only return when we stop measuring existence in fragments and start living it as a continuum. But there's a strange paradox in this slower world. Without clocks, how would we measure achievement? Without calendars, how would we chase progress? Maybe we wouldn't need to. Maybe success would stop being about accumulation and start being about alignment, being where you need to be, in harmony with the hour's hue. You'd notice the difference between urgency and purpose. You'd stop racing time and begin walking beside it, hand in hand. Imagine the impact on the human psyche. No more late nights haunted by glowing screens or the guilt of unfinished tasks. Instead, you'd learn to listen to color, to trust the rhythm of your surroundings. The violet hour might coax introspection, a natural cue to slow down, before the silver hour before dawn could invite mindfulness, a space to dream without hurry. Life would breathe again. The nervous system, long trained to chase seconds, would finally exhale. There's also nostalgia in this way of living, isn't there? It echoes something ancient, the time before time, when our ancestors followed the sun and stars instead of mechanical hands. Back then, dusk and dawn weren't times of day. They were feelings. The coral hour and the indigo hour would bring us back to that intimacy, to a world where we don't look at clocks to know who we are. We look at the sky. Children born into this world would grow up differently. Their language would shimmer with hue. They'd learn to describe memory through color. The day you left was pale blue. The day you returned was amber. Emotional intelligence would expand, not as data, but as rhythm. Even relationships would flow differently, less rigid, more intuitive. You'd feel when someone needed space or comfort or silence, because the sky would mirror it all, and perhaps most beautifully, every hour would carry its own flavor of presence. When you live by color, you can't help but notice. You'd lift your head more often. You'd remember the shade of a moment the way we now remember songs. The choral hour wouldn't just mark time. It would teach time to move, to soften, to become circular again. Life itself would feel like one long exhale, a loop of breathing light. You might even begin to see yourself differently. Without clocks, you're no longer a creature of deadlines. You're a creature of rhythm. You begin to ask, what if time was never meant to be counted, only felt? What if every changing hue in the sky was the universe reminding you that everything, even chaos, even delay, has its own beauty when seen in rhythm? That's the quiet empowerment hidden in this world. You stop fighting for control and start aligning with flow. And yet, in this peace, a trace of curiosity remains. Would we miss the precision of our ticking world? Would we long for the sharp certainty of knowing 5 minutes late? Maybe a few would, but most would find something richer, a new kind of awareness, one where every shade of the sky holds the weight of a minute, the warmth of a memory, the invitation of a moment fully lived. Because in this world, time isn't something that happens to you. It's something that unfolds with you. Each hour breathes its own lesson. Coral for beginning, blue for focus, amber for gratitude, violet for rest. No pressure, no race, just color, just rhythm. Just life, moving softly through its own palette. And maybe, when the final indigo hour falls, and night closes her quiet hand over the world, you'd realize something profound, that time never needed numbers at all. It only needed your attention. If you've ever watched the sky long enough to see it change, you've witnessed something ancient, the universe whispering in color. But here's a thought. What if this phenomenon wasn't just Earth's gift? What if, across the cosmos, skies shifted their shades every hour to painting alien horizons with rhythms and palettes that no human eye has ever seen? Let's drift first to Mars, the red wanderer. Its sky isn't blue, but butterscotch, soft, dusty, and ancient. During the Martian day, sunlight struggles through thin air filled with fine rust-colored particles, scattering not in the vibrant blues we know, but in deep amber. Imagine if those sands danced differently each hour, the sky turning golden in the morning, then rose in the afternoon, and finally dissolving into lavender mist at dusk. The Martian people, if they existed, would not measure time in minutes, but in hues of dust and flame. "I'll see you when the sky blushes," they might say, and every meeting would carry the poetry of survival under a fading sun. Now drift farther, past the asteroid belt, toward the gas giant Jupiter, a world wrapped in storms. Here, color is alive. The sky itself moves like a living organism. Bands of caramel, ochre, and cream swirling endlessly, shaped by winds faster than sound. If this world's atmosphere changed color hourly, imagine the sight. Oceans of clouds glowing emerald, then bleeding into bronze, then flashing white lightning through layers of violet haze. It wouldn't just be a sky. It would be an orchestra of storms performing a cosmic symphony. You could spend your life watching it and still never see the same pattern twice. And what of Saturn, the planet of rings and rhythm? Its skies already shimmer softly, touched by sunlight filtered through icy halos. If the color changed every hour, the entire world would glow like a dream. Honey at dawn, pearl at noon, deep indigo by the ring-shadowed night. The reflections on its lakes of methane would shift too, creating ripples of liquid color. Time there wouldn't feel linear. It would feel circular, eternal, looping softly through tones of gold and gray. You might lose your sense of hurry entirely, forgetting where 1 hour ends and the next begins, because beauty, when endless, dissolves the need for time. Then there's Titan, Saturn's strange, misty moon. Its atmosphere is thick, orange, and secretive, as if it's always hiding something. Picture it breathing through color, translucent amber giving way to dusky rose, then fading to smoky blue as the methane fog settles again. The surface would glow softly, as if the whole moon were lit from within. Creatures there, if they exist, would evolve eyes tuned to warmth rather than brightness, seeing through the haze, not for clarity, but for emotion. For them, color wouldn't just mark time. It would feel like time, slow, tender, cyclical, venture deeper still, to Neptune, the farthest blue sentinel of our solar system. Its sky already holds one color with near perfection, a piercing, endless cobalt. But what if that vastness shimmered through a full spectrum every few hours, from sapphire to violet, turquoise to shadow, each wave of light carried by supersonic winds? Under such a sky, time would feel like breathing in infinity, vast, distant, unending. The people of Neptune, if such beings ever existed, would live not by the rise of a sun, but by the pulse of light itself. Every hue would be a heartbeat of a planet that never sleeps, and somewhere beyond, perhaps orbiting a star not yet named, lies a world where the sky changes faster than thought every few minutes instead of hours. There living things would evolve not to see color, but to sense it, to feel the frequency of shifting light as an emotion. They'd never know stillness, yet they'd never know boredom either. Their entire existence would be a meditation on impermanence, the beauty of something always becoming something else. When you look back at Earth from that distance, our blue sky seems humble, doesn't it? And yet it holds its own miracle, the perfect scattering of light that allows life to flourish, oceans to glisten, and our moods to soften at sunset. But when you imagine skies that change every hour on every world, you realize something profound, that light itself is universal, but the way it expresses life is endlessly diverse. This vision awakens a kind of cosmic empathy. The same sunlight that paints our clouds also brushes across the storms of Jupiter, the ice rings of Saturn, and the violet shadows of Neptune. It's the same energy, refracted through countless atmospheres, telling infinite stories. The universe is not silent. It's singing in wavelengths, in shades, in motion. And perhaps that's what draws us to the night sky so deeply. Not just curiosity, but recognition. Somewhere in the colors above those distant worlds, something in us remembers that we, too, are part of that same unfolding art. The photons that paint the blue of our own sky once danced. Near alien stars, they've seen things our minds can only dream. So maybe, the next time you look up and see a cloud drift across a golden horizon, imagine it not as the end of a day, but as a tiny echo of a cosmic cycle repeating everywhere, colors breathing, worlds turning, time flowing not in numbers but in light. Because, even across the galaxies, under skies will never stand beneath. The story remains the same. The universe paints, and everything alive learns how to glow. And yet, as we drift farther beyond Neptune's blue serenity, something remarkable begins to happen. The concept of sky itself starts to dissolve. In the interstellar dark, there is no up or down, no horizon to divide the known from the infinite. But even here, color does not vanish, it migrates inward. It becomes the pulse of stars, the shimmer of nebulae, the slow blooming of light in the womb of space. Imagine watching not a single sun rise or set, but entire constellations breathing one brightening while another fades, like galaxies communicating in light. If the cosmos had a sky that changed every hour, It would be the entire universe itself, shifting its canvas in quiet, majestic rotation. On a distant exoplanet orbiting a red dwarf, light takes on new meaning. The sun there burns dimly, so skies glow in muted crimson, like perpetual sunset. If the color changed each hour, that world would live in gradients of warmths, scarlet to russet, to violet to black. The beings there might grow with skin that reflects light instead of absorbing it, transforming with the sky. A morning creature might gleam golden, while at night its body ripples in cool indigo tones. Their communication might not even use words. Instead, emotion could flicker across their skin as color, language written in luminescence. For them, empathy would be visible. Now, imagine a planet circling two suns. There, every hour brings twin shadows crossing in opposite directions. The sky would be alive with perpetual contrast, half gold, half rose, always in motion. Life would learn to adapt in duality, plants bending toward whichever sun dominates, creatures resting only when both lights dim together. In this world, a day might never fully end. People wouldn't speak of time as linear, but as woven threads of color twisting and looping endlessly. The inhabitants might measure age not in years, but in the number of color cycles they have lived through, defining memory by the hue of the heavens when it occurred. Further still, near the edge of a pulsar system, the sky flashes rhythmically as the star spins a cosmic heartbeat. Every few seconds, the world lights up in stark blue-white brilliance before sinking into near night. If the sky there changed hues hourly, the effect would be hypnotic, alternating waves of brilliance and calm. Civilization would evolve around rhythm and pause, music and silence. The people would build entire philosophies around stillness, valuing the space between bursts of light more than the brightness itself. Time there would not be measured by duration, but by pulse. Even the idea of color itself transforms in the far reaches of space. In the deep atmospheres of gas giants like Uranus, where methane mutes most visible light, colors are whispers rather than songs. But if they shifted hourly emerald, blending to gray to soft, ice blue, the effect would be almost emotional. These skies would not shout, they would breathe. The world would appear to sigh with light, creating a slow, planetary meditation. Every creature, every storm, would seem to exist in sync with this gentle rhythm, as if the entire planet exhaled in unison. Step beyond even that, into the swirling arms of a nebula. Here, color isn't bound to air or atmosphere, it floats freely, sculpted by magnetic winds and starbursts. 1,000 hues coexist without clashing, moving like cosmic ink in water. In such a place, you wouldn't need to look up. The sky would surround you from every direction, a three-dimensional ocean of shifting radiance. Imagine living there. Inside color itself, each hour revealing a new palette as stars ignite and fade. The experience would redefine perception. Seeing would no longer be passive. It would be participation. You would feel color as vibration, hear it as resonance, and still. All this brings us back to one simple truth. Everywhere in the universe, color is time made visible. Each shift, each tone marks change, light aging, energy dispersing, matter evolving. It's the most universal clock there is, yet instead of numbers, it measures in feeling. A turquoise nebula doesn't say 1 o'clock. It says, "This is the moment of quiet birth." A crimson dusk on Mars whispers, "This is the moment of return." Across planets, moons, and stars, time doesn't tick, it glows. Perhaps that's why humans, even on Earth, have always looked up for meaning. We are color-seeking creatures in a cosmos that paints without end. By the idea of skies that change, hourly touches something ancient in USA, yearning for renewal, for cycles we can trust. We crave the reassurance that even as everything changes, beauty will return in a new form. And isn't that what time truly is? Not loss, but transformation. In this cosmic version of our world, there would be no fear of time slipping away. You wouldn't dread the passing of an hour, because the next would promise a new sky, a new shade, a new emotion. Life would be a gallery in motion. Each glance upward would remind you, nothing stays, but nothing truly leaves either. Everything becomes something else. So maybe, if the sky changed colors every hour across every world, it wouldn't just redefine how we see the universe, it would redefine how we feel it. Time would stop being a number and start being a song. Each hour a note that fades just as another begins. And as the galaxies turn, as stars ignite and die, as worlds breathe in rhythm with their shifting heavens, we might finally understand what the universe has been whispering all along, that we are not separate from the sky. We are one of its colors, fleeting, radiant, and endlessly becoming. There's a strange magic in the moments when the day forgets what it's supposed to be, when the sun hesitates at the edge of the horizon, unsure whether to stay or surrender. The world softens, then the light no longer fierce, the shadows no longer cold. Everything melts into something in between. Have you ever noticed how quiet it gets? The birds stop mid-song, as if listening. Even your own breath seems slower, almost reverent. Twilight doesn't ask for attention. It arrives like a sigh, gentle, inevitable, and full of meaning you can't quite name. If our sky changed colors every hour, twilight would be a constant companion, a living reminder that nothing truly ends. It only transforms. Each shift in hue would be a slow confession of time itself. That passage isn't destruction, it's translation. The way crimson translates to violet, how gold turns to gray, not because it wants to vanish, but because it's ready to become something new. Maybe that's what change really is, the art of soft becoming. There's beauty in that kind of uncertainty, a fragile, aching beauty, the kind that asks you to feel rather than fix. You can't hold twilight. You can't photograph its exact hue because it's already changing as you do. The same is true for the moments in your life when you stand between what was and what's next. You know that quiet ache, the job you've outgrown but haven't left, the relationship fading gently instead of breaking. These are your personal twilights, those color-shifting pauses between versions of yourself. Most people fear them. We crave clarity, borders, labels. But twilight laughs at our need for definition. It whispers, "Why rush to name what's still becoming?" That's its secret. It doesn't fight impermanence. It dances with it. The sky doesn't mourn the loss of blue when night arrives. It simply dissolves into deeper tones. Imagine if we lived that way, letting go of versions of ourselves with grace instead of guilt. In that hour of color blending, the world stops competing. Contrast softens. The bright no longer battles the dark. They meet in the middle and make something new, something neither light nor shadow, but both. It's the most peaceful truce nature ever writes. And maybe that's why twilight feels so spiritual. It's not just a time of day. It's an emotion, one that teaches you the rare skill of stillness. Think about it. Twilight never hurries. It stretches. It lingers. It invites you to pause, to simply be. That's why sunsets feel longer than they are. Our minds slip into a slower rhythm, as if matching the earth's breath. Psychologists call it temporal dilation, but maybe it's something simpler: alignment. For a few minutes, your inner chaos matches the outer calm, and everything feels briefly, exquisitely right. The shadows between colors carry wisdom, too. They remind us that clarity isn't the same as peace. You don't need to know what's next to feel safe. Sometimes you only need to trust that the next color will come. Just as dusk gives way to night, night gives way to dawn. Your life is a series of subtle transitions. And every ending you've ever survived was just another gradient. Another blending of the old light into the new. Maybe that's why twilight often makes us nostalgic, not for what we've lost, but for what we once felt certain about. Certainty is intoxicating, isn't it? It feels safe, structured, unchanging. But certainty is also a cage. Twilight frees you from it by reminding you that life isn't meant to be constant. It's meant to be alive. Every hour, every feeling, every identity you wear is just a passing color. You don't have to pick one and stay there. And when you let that truth sink in, a soft calm takes over, the melancholic kind that doesn't demand fixing. The kind that allows sadness to exist without resistance. Because even sadness has texture, color, and beauty when you stop turning away from it. That's the emotional twilight, the moment when sorrow and acceptance merge, and you realize that endings don't hurt because they're cruel. They hurt because they're beautiful. Listen closely, and you'll notice how twilight has a sound, not silence, but something beneath it. The low hum of crickets, the hush of wind through leaves, the gentle echo of footsteps fading. The world exhales then. It's as if creation itself is saying, "You've done enough today. Rest now." That's the contemplative silence we so rarely allow ourselves. The kind that isn't empty but full. Full of space, of breath, of being. And yet, twilight never truly lasts. It's over before you can even name its final shade. But that's what makes it sacred. By its brevity is its power. We cherish what doesn't last, because we sense, deep down, that its impermanence mirrors our own. The sky teaches us this truth gently, with colors that dissolve like memory. Maybe that's the real secret of twilight. It's not here to stay. It's here to teach us how to let go beautifully. So, what if the sky changed colors every hour? We would live in a world where twilight was constant, where transformation wasn't a season but a rhythm. Maybe then we'd stop treating change as a crisis and start treating it as choreography. Maybe we'd stop trying to freeze the beautiful moments and instead learn to flow with them. We'd become artists of impermanence, painting our lives in gradients instead of absolutes. Because the truth is, the universe itself is a twilight, always shifting, never done. Stars are born and die. Galaxies fade and reform. Light travels for billions of years just to change color in your sky for a few fleeting minutes. And somehow, that thought doesn't make existence smaller. It makes it vast. So tonight, as the colors drift and the shadows merge, don't rush to turn on the lights. Just stand there for a moment, between what was and what's next. Feel the air soften. Watch the world melt. Let it remind you that you, too, are allowed to change quietly, beautifully, and without apology. Because even as the colors fade, something luminous always remains. The knowing that you were here, alive, beneath a sky that never stopped becoming. Sometimes, when the sky shifts color, it feels like the world is remembering something. You can almost sense it, that quiet ache behind beauty, that gentle nostalgia that rises when the light changes. There's a moment, just before you name the color, when you feel it instead, deep in your chest, like the memory of someone you once loved, or a version of yourself you forgot to keep. Maybe that's what color really is. Emotion translated into light. Imagine a world where the sky changes every hour, not just as spectacle, but as language. Every hue would carry a story, a heartbeat, a human connection. The amber hour could become the time of family dinners, laughter spilling through open windows. The indigo hour, a time for lovers who meet in secret, whispering under a sky that feels infinite. And the coral hour, that soft in-between where you remember something from childhood, a toy, a voice, a feeling you can't quite hold but don't want to lose. Color has always been memory's first messenger. Think about it. You don't remember a childhood day by its date, but by its hue. The blue of a swimming pool that seemed bottomless. The green of summer grass under your back as you watched clouds drift. The gold of sunlight that turned your hair to fire. Our hearts don't count time in hours or years. They count it in shades. If the sky changed colors every hour, maybe we'd become fluent in emotional time. We'd say things like, I met her during the lilac hour, or he left when the sky turned to silver. Our language would shift from numbers to feelings, and maybe that would make us softer, more present. because numbers separate us from time. But color invites us to feel it. You don't measure a sunset. You experience it. Science tells us color is nothing more than light frequencies. But experience tells us otherwise. We don't see color, we feel it. Red warms, blue quiets, gold heals. These are not just optical reactions. They're psychological whispers. Each color tugs at a different thread of who we are. The amber sky makes us sentimental because it reminds us of endings. The pale blue one makes us hopeful because it feels like a beginning. We live our emotions through the sky, even when we pretend not to. Imagine generations growing up under skies that refuse to stay the same. Each person would form their identity not through rigid time, but through fluid emotion. Children might say, "I was born in the age of the violet sky," or "My happiest memories live under the emerald light." Over time, history itself might be painted rather than written. Wars remembered by the color of the sky that day. Peace celebrated in shades of dawn. It's strange, isn't it, how memory works like twilight. It fades and blends. No moment ever truly ends. It just dissolves into another, colored by perception. Think of the people you've loved. Do you remember their birthdays, or the light in which you saw them? That soft glow of evening on their face, the way the room turned golden before they spoke. We never remember people by fact. We remember them by color, by warmth, by tone, by light. Maybe that's why nostalgia feels so bittersweet. It's not just longing for the past. It's our mind trying to recreate a lost palette by the colors of who we were before time dimmed them. A faded blue of safety, a soft pink of innocence, a stormy gray of growth. The sky, shifting each hour, would keep reminding us nothing stays, and that's why it's beautiful. In a way, this imagined sky becomes a mirror. It doesn't just show us color, it shows us ourselves. Every hue becomes a question. Who was I during the indigo hour? What part of me belongs to the crimson dawn? It's a gentle kind of self-inquiry, one that doesn't demand answers, only awareness. And maybe that's the healing part, because healing rarely comes from logic. It comes from light, slow, layered, patient light. The human heart is built like the sky, capable of endless gradients. It holds joy and grief, peace and chaos, all at once. We try to separate them, but they were never meant to be separated. Even sorrow glows a little when you stop hiding from it. Even happiness carries a shade of quiet when you learn to see it fully. That's what color does. It teaches emotional literacy. It lets you see feeling without words. So perhaps, in this world of ever-changing skies, we'd stop running from emotion. We'd stop pretending to be constant, and instead live like the horizon, always shifting, always true. Maybe we'd even start treating each other differently. Imagine comforting someone not by asking what's wrong, but by saying, "I see you're living through your violet hour right now." There's empathy in that. Understanding without intrusion. And at the end of each day, when the final color faded into darkness, we'd know something sacred, that every hue, every moment, every emotion was worth being seen. The sky's palette would be our shared diary, one written not in ink but in feeling, because in the end, what connects us isn't the time we keep, but the colors we remember. Maybe that's the secret the universe has been trying to show us all along, that love, memory, and light are the same thing, refracted differently through each of us. And as long as the sky keeps changing, so can we. There would come a day, perhaps slowly, perhaps all at once, when the colors would simply stop. The sky, once alive with shifting moods and endless expression, would settle into one final hue. No warning, no thunderclap of ending, just stillness. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the world above you has gone quiet. The rhythm that once painted your hours, the coral dawns, the violet afternoons, the silver dusks, has been replaced by permanence. At first, you might call it peace, a break from the kaleidoscope. The constancy could feel comforting, almost merciful. But as days pass, you'd notice something deeper missing, that invisible pulse, that subtle heartbeat of change that made the world feel alive. The still sky would begin to feel heavy, not because of its color, but because of its silence. We are creatures built on motion, our emotions, our memories, even ourselves. Everything about us depends on rhythm, on ebb and flow. The moment change disappears, we begin to forget what living feels like. The still sky would be beautiful, yes, but in the same way a photograph of laughter is beautiful, lovely, but no longer breathing. People would gather at first and stare upward, waiting. Children would ask when the next color was coming, and their parents wouldn't know what to say. Artists would lift their brushes, hesitate, and slowly set them down. Lovers who once met beneath the indigo hour might lose their meeting place, unsure how to mark time without change. The world would continue, factories, conversations, laughter, but under a single, unmoving sky. Everything would begin to feel slightly less alive. And then something strange would happen, something beautifully human. Slowly, imperceptibly, people would start to create the change they missed. Painters would fill walls with colors that used to visit them freely. Dancers would wear garments that shimmered, so that light could move again when they moved. Music would become more colorful, notes bending into shades of feeling that language could no longer hold. We always rebuild what time takes away. It's how we survive endings. But even as we adapted, a quiet ache would remain, not for the loss itself, but for the realization that we never truly appreciated what we had while it was alive. We often treat beauty as a background to living, forgetting that it is living. The changing sky was never decoration. It was a mirror. It reflected our moods, our impermanence, our smallness within something vast. Now, faced with stillness, we would finally understand. Motion was the meaning. Imagine standing outside one evening, remembering what used to be. You close your eyes, and in memory, the sky breathes again, soft gold turning to rose, then indigo melting into black. You remember how each change once made you feel connected to everything, a pulse shared between earth and light. And as the image fades, you feel something both painful and profound. Gratitude, because even though it's gone, it once was. And that, somehow, feels enough. This is the quiet paradox of impermanence, that the things we love most are precious because they end. If the sky had always stayed the same, we would have stopped seeing it long ago. Constancy numbs the heart. Change keeps it awake. That's why sunsets move us, their promises written in disappearing ink. We cry not because the light fades, but because it reminds us that everything beautiful must. Psychologists call this the poignancy effect. Our minds attach deeper meaning to fleeting experiences. When we know something won't last, we become fully present for it. Maybe that's why the sky's colors mattered so much. They were a daily lesson in awareness, a gentle reminder that beauty doesn't need to stay to be real. The fading sky taught us to look, to feel, to let go, and maybe, deep down, the still sky wouldn't be a punishment at all, but a final lesson, a soft invitation to carry color inward. We'd start finding it in places we once ignored, in the warmth of another's hand, in the sound of laughter echoing down a quiet street, in the small joy of noticing light move across a wall. The external sky might have frozen, but the internal one would begin to awaken. That's how healing begins. When we stop demanding that the world change for us and start seeing how we can change within it. The loss of the shifting sky would teach us how to generate our own palette of feeling, our own rhythm of renewal. We'd realize that we never needed the heavens to dance for us. The dance was always happening inside. So perhaps the end of color isn't truly an ending. Maybe it's a turning point, the moment when the world hands the brush back to us. Because every loss, no matter how cosmic or quiet, carries within it a whisper of creation. Something stops only so something new can begin. And as you lie beneath that still sky, perhaps one night when the air is calm and memory feels close, you'll feel a flicker, not in the heavens, but in yourself. A subtle warmth, a pulse of light behind your closed eyes. It will remind you of what once was, and in that remembrance, the colors will return, not to the sky, but to your soul. The sky rests now, breathing no more colors. Yet, within the silence, we learn the oldest truth there is. Nothing beautiful ever truly disappears. It simply changes form from the light above us to the light within us. And as long as we keep remembering, as long as we keep feeling, the sky will never really fade. But endings, even the quiet ones, rarely stay still. Stillness has a way of becoming a mirror, showing us truths we once moved too quickly to notice. When the sky stopped changing, people began noticing everything else that still did. The way shadows lengthened as the day aged. The way wind brushed against the surface of lakes, rippling the reflection of that frozen color. The sky might have stopped breathing, but the earth hadn't, and slowly humanity began listening again to the subtler rhythms that had always been there. At first, the change felt unbearable. People longed for the pinks that once kissed the clouds and the cerulean afternoons that shimmered like memory. But something remarkable happened in that ache, an awakening of gratitude. You don't realize how often you took beauty for granted until it stops moving. And so every glance upward became sacred, not because of what changed, but because of what remained. That single unchanging sky became a teacher in presence, asking quietly, "Can you love what no longer transforms?" Artists began to answer that question with reverence. Painters stopped chasing color and started chasing light itself, how it struck metal, skin, glass. Poets turned inward, finding hues within emotions, describing sadness as amber, forgiveness as lilac. Musicians began composing symphonies meant to sound like movement, even when there was none above them. Humanity found a way to keep painting, this time not with pigment, but with perception, and somewhere between grief and adaptation, life found new meaning. There's a moment in every great loss where resistance melts into surrender. That surrender isn't giving up, it's letting go of control long enough to rediscover wonder. People began realizing that maybe the colors hadn't left at all. Maybe they'd simply moved from the sky into the soul. The world above had gone still, so that the world within could begin to shift. Children born after the stillness didn't miss what had come before. They grew up beneath that quiet dome of color, and to them it wasn't loss, it was stability. Their art was different, their music softer, their sense of time slower. The older generations watched this with something between heartbreak and awe. They realized that the world doesn't end when change stops. It simply learns a new way to move. But the next generation began building lives not around change, but around meaning. And in a strange, full-circle way, life became beautiful again. Philosophers began writing about this era as the Great Pause. They said it forced humanity to finally answer the question it had always avoided. If nothing around you ever changes again, who will you become? The truth, they discovered, was that we had spent centuries defining ourselves by motion, progress, novelty, evolution. But in stillness, we rediscovered essence. The sky's silence became an invitation to stop running from ourselves. Psychologists observed a new kind of peace emerging, one born not of excitement, but of deep acceptance. When the external world stopped offering constant stimulation, people began noticing their inner weather. Some discovered storms, others discovered sunlight. All discovered that color had never been an external phenomenon. It had always been a reflection of inner perception. The world's palette had not dimmed, only our eyes had changed direction, in time. The still sky became a spiritual symbol, not of death, but of unity, because when the sky no longer divided itself into colors, it became one whole. That sameness reminded people that everything, at its core, is made of the same light. The endless cycle of colors had taught us about beauty in change. By The endless stillness now taught us about beauty in being. One night, centuries after the colors faded, an old woman sat beneath that unmoving sky. She had lived through both eras, the shifting heavens and the endless calm. A child sat beside her, asking what it had been like before. The woman smiled softly, her eyes reflecting both memory and peace. "It was like living inside a song," she said. "But this silence is like hearing the space between the notes." The child didn't fully understand, but she looked upward, and for a moment she thought she saw the faintest pulse of light drift across the heavens. Maybe it was just her imagination, or maybe the sky was breathing again, because that's the thing about endings. They're rarely final. The universe doesn't destroy, it transforms. Change pauses only to gather strength for its next unveiling. Perhaps in that moment of stillness, when humanity had finally learned to be content, the cosmos decided it was time again. The faint shimmer became a whisper of violet, then rose, then gold. People looked up, disbelieving, hearts trembling. After all that stillness, the sky was moving once more. Tears fell, not from sorrow, but from awe. They weren't crying because the colors had returned, but because they realized something profound. The beauty had never left them. It had lived quietly inside every act of patience, every shared silence, every small kindness. The changing sky was not a gift given to them. It was a mirror created by them. And as the world watched that first color spill across the heavens, no one cheered, no one shouted. They simply breathed slowly, together. The air itself seemed to hum. The sky, after its long rest, exhaled a new dawn. It wasn't the same as before. It never could be. The colors were softer now, almost hesitant, like the world remembering how to dream. But that was enough, because this time everyone understood what it meant. They knew that one day it might fade again, and that was precisely what made it precious. So they didn't ask how long it would last. They simply looked up and whispered thank you, not to the sky, but to the silence that taught them how to see, because the truth of the cosmos and of the human heart is the same. Nothing is truly lost, only transformed. In every fading color, every ending, every stillness is just another way the universe learns to love itself anew. The first dawn returns, not as a beginning, but as a memory, soft, familiar, and endless. The world lies quiet beneath it, as though time itself has slowed down to listen. You can almost feel it, that hush before the colors change, the air trembling with the breath of something sacred. Maybe it's not the dawn itself that's special, but what it reminds us of, that every ending, every transformation, and every silence carries within it a promise of return. The same promise the sky has kept since the first light touched the world, to rise, to change, and to rest again for so long. We believed beauty came from motion, from the way the sky could turn itself into a painting every hour, every season, every heartbeat. But now, standing here at the hour of stillness, we understand something deeper. Change is not the opposite of peace. It's the rhythm that gives peace its meaning. Without change, beauty would have no contrast. Without endings, beginnings would lose their magic. Every fading color has always been a gentle reminder that nothing is truly ours to keep, and that's exactly why it's precious. Think about your own life for a moment. How many skies have you stood under? How many versions of yourself have looked up and wondered the same thing? You've changed, haven't you? Quietly, imperceptibly, hour by hour, just like the sky. Maybe your colors are softer now. Maybe you don't burn as brightly as you once did, but you glow in gentler ways. The world doesn't always notice those changes, but you feel them in the way you speak, the way you love, the way you forgive. You are not who you were, and that's something to be proud of. The sky's colors were never random. They were lessons in disguise. Every golden dawn whispered, "Begin again." Every violet dusk murmured, "Let go." The in-between hours, those subtle shades of gray and blue, they taught us patience. Together, they became a language we didn't need to translate. The sky spoke in feelings, not words, and deep down, we always understood. Because just like the sky, we've been learning to balance the ache of impermanence with the quiet joy of simply existing. And now, in this imagined world where colors shift every hour, what would it mean to rest? To stop chasing the next hue and simply sit beneath whatever sky we have. There's something sacred in stillness, not the kind that freezes life, but the kind that lets it settle. When we allow ourselves to pause, even for a moment, the world reveals its softer edges. You start noticing the weight of the air, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the warmth of the light on your skin. The sky changes, but you remain. You become the witness, not the storm. There's a quiet kind of power in that realization. It's the same power that comes when you stop trying to hold on to everything, when you realize that you don't need to capture the sunset to appreciate it. You just need to be there for it. That's what the hour of stillness teaches us, that presence is the purest form of love. It's not about owning the moment, but honoring it, watching it fade without fear, knowing it will return in another form. Maybe that's why every culture, every century, every soul has looked up at the sky in search of something greater. It's not the colors we crave, it's the reminder that we belong to something that never truly stops moving, even when we do. That even when everything feels uncertain, the rhythm of the universe continues, patient, timeless, kind. And perhaps that's the secret of peace, not finding stillness outside ourselves, but realizing it was within us all along. When you close your eyes tonight, imagine the sky above you changing colors, each one dissolving into the next. Blue into amber, amber into rose, rose into indigo. Every shade a heartbeat, every heartbeat a whisper. You are safe here. You are changing, and that's okay. Because the truth is, you don't need a sky that changes every hour to live a beautiful life. You just need to remember that every emotion, every chapter, every version of you is a color worth existing. Some hours will be bright, others muted. Some seasons will burst with light, others will move like shadows. But all of them, every single one, are part of your sky. And it's okay if you can't love them all equally. Even the darkest clouds have their quiet beauty. So, as the sky turns tonight, whether it's in your imagination or just beyond your window, let it remind you of this simple truth. You are part of something vast, something cyclical, something endlessly reborn. Life is not about chasing the next sunrise. It's about learning to rest beneath the one you already have. And if you're still awake, somewhere between dream and reflection, maybe leave a little star in the comments below, a small light in this digital sky. It's a way of saying, I'm here too. I'm watching the colors fade. I'm learning to be still. You'd be surprised how many others are watching beside you, breathing in sync, hearts unfolding in the same quiet rhythm. Because that's what this journey has always been about. Not the science of color or the physics of light, but the human experience of wonder. A reminder that even in the infinite vastness of the cosmos, the smallest flicker of awareness, yours, can make it feel alive. So tonight, as the world outside begins to drift into silence, and your own thoughts slow their orbit, let the sky, whatever color it wears, hold you. Let it tell you that you don't need to do anything more, become anything more, prove anything more. Just be, breathe, exist beneath this hour of stillness. And as the first dawn returns again, somewhere beyond sight, remember this: the sky doesn't worry about the next color. It simply turns endlessly, gently, together with time. The sky turns softly again, like a breath you didn't know you were holding, finally let go. It's quieter now. Not empty, just calm. The colors have faded, but in their absence, something new has appeared, a deeper kind of clarity. It's strange how silence can glow, how stillness can feel like an invisible light. Maybe that's what we've been chasing all along. Not endless color, not constant motion, but the peace that comes after everything else has dissolved. Think of all the skies you've lived beneath, the golden ones that felt like possibility, the gray ones that mirrored your sadness, the deep, starless nights when you couldn't see where the world ended. They were all telling the same story, that life moves in cycles, not lines. That change doesn't erase what came before. It carries it forward, like a whisper layered under the next breath. Bend somewhere between those transitions, between what fades and what begins again. You found yourself. That's the gift of the fading hour. It makes us notice. When the sky grows still, when the noise dies down, the smallest things come alive. The faint hum of the earth, the softness of your heartbeat, the way the air cools as though the world itself is exhaling. We often run from these moments, filling the silence with plans, screens, sound, anything to distract from what the quiet might say. But the truth is, this stillness is not empty. It's sacred. It's the pause before the next wave of color, before the next chapter of you. There's something almost fragile about this kind of peace. You can't force it, can't hold it too tightly. It only exists when you let it. Like the faint light of dawn, it asks for gentleness, a willingness to be present, even when nothing seems to be happening. Because that's when transformation truly takes root, not in the noise of becoming, but in the silence of being. If the sky had never stopped changing, maybe we would never have learned how to stop with it. We'd always be waiting for the next color, the next thrill, the next version of beauty. But now, in this imagined still sky, we are asked to do something harder, to find beauty in the absence of movement, to find meaning in the pause. That's not easy. We're creatures of momentum, always chasing light. Yet here, under this motionless sky, we discover a truth that's both humbling and freeing. That peace doesn't come from what changes, but from accepting that everything must start. Imagine standing beneath this unmoving dome. No golden dawn to signal beginning, no violet dusk to promise rest. Just one endless hue, quiet, suspended, eternal. At first it feels like loss, but slowly your eyes adjust. You start to see new details, the texture of the clouds, the subtle play of shadow, the delicate balance between light and breath. What once felt static begins to feel infinite. You realize that stillness isn't the absence of life, it's the essence of it. And maybe, in that realization, something inside you loosens. The need to rush, the weight of what's next, the ache of what's gone, they all begin to fade, like the colors before this stillness. Because even when the sky stops moving, time does not end. It just softens its voice, asking you to listen in a new way, to trust that beauty doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just hums quietly, constantly, within you. There's a kind of healing that happens when we stop fighting the fading. When we stop clinging to what was and start breathing with what is. It's the same healing the sky knows when night falls, a surrender that isn't defeat, but renewal. You can feel it, can't you? That gentle release that comes when you stop trying to control every hue of your own story. The peace that follows is not a lack of feeling. It's the deep, calm understanding that all feelings pass. And that's their beauty. Maybe that's what the fading sky was trying to teach us all along. That fragility isn't weakness. It's the proof of life. Every color we've ever loved was temporary. Every moment we've ever cherished was built to end. And yet, here we are, remembering them, carrying them. That's what makes us human. We are collectors of moments that don't last. And somehow that makes them shine brighter. So tonight, as the final color drifts into quiet, don't mourn what's gone. Let it settle in you like the echo of a song that no longer needs to be sung. Let yourself rest in the knowledge that endings are never final. They're transitions, written in softer ink. You are not losing the sky. You are becoming part of it. And when you lie down, eyes heavy, thoughts slow, notice how your own mind begins to fade in the same rhythm. The edges blur. The inner light softens. The body surrenders to something larger than itself. This is your hour of stillness. By the space where memory, breath, and color blend into one. You are not separate from the fading. You are the fading. And that's where the beauty lies, in the shared rhythm between you and the world, both learning to let go. When the colors fade, it doesn't mean they're gone. It means they've transformed into something quieter, deeper, eternal, into you. The sky's last act isn't disappearance. It's becoming invisible enough to be everywhere. That's what change really is, not loss, but diffusion. The merging of what was into what will be. So breathe with the sky one last time tonight. Feel the soft weight of the air, the slow beat of your heart. Every pulse is a color, every thought a cloud, every sigh a sunrise waiting to happen again. You don't need to see the colors to trust that they'll return. You just need to rest, right here, right now, under the hour of stillness that belongs only to you. And as you drift toward sleep, remember this: the sky doesn't end when its colors fade. It just begins again, quietly, endlessly, in another form. And as the sky turns, so do we, endlessly, gently, together. Good night.